You can mute your mic when you're not speaking. If you go to the bottom bar, there's a raise hand button, and just so we're not talking over, if you want to speak or something, just click that, and that way we can kind of let you speak without being interrupted. Looks like Robert's in. Awesome. And then if you have links or anything, just drop them in the chat. Just so you guys know, we are recording the meeting. This will go up on our YouTube channel, hopefully in the next couple of days. And then I'll try and keep things focused on single questions. And if there's somebody like walks away or forgets to turn off your mic, I will mute you just to reduce that background noise. Just so everyone kind of knows how we're doing everything. And there, I'm back. Awesome. So first off, how's everybody doing on this wonderful Saturday afternoon? Okay. All right. So I guess Neil or Pete, whoever wants to go first.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you wanted us to actually raise our hand to answer that question.
Oh, no, just, yeah, you know what?
It's just thinking the same thing, Neil.
It's so many of these, people end up talking over each other. So I'm just trying to get something in place so that we're not doing that. Because that never happens in our classes. So I guess my first question to the group is, what's been working in your classes? What hasn't been? Neil, you want to go? Or is that left over?
What do you mean?
The hand up.
Oh, I raised it for before. Oh,
okay.
Oh, I have to lower it. See, I haven't used Google Meet. We're using Zoom at St. John's High School.
Okay.
Oh, I don't know what's worked. It's a very general question. What hasn't? I've taught, well, we're in trimesters. First try, okay. I taught all woodworking classes. We were face-to-face for about the first half, just enough time to get through what can be done online. And then right when we were starting projects, we got shut down. So it ended up being just daily questions, some videos to watch, doing short responses. Unfortunately, it did not end. The trimester didn't end as it should, actually completing a project. So I didn't require a project to be completed. I was allowed to have open lab some. So probably out of about 75 students, I probably saw 5 that chose to voluntarily come in. Now we're on second trimester, and I'm actually teaching history and drafting, so it's different. We will be able to, for the most part, do everything we normally do. Drafting has been a struggle, getting devices to students that will run AutoCAD, because every student has a Chromebook they've been issued for at home. But okay. Chromebooks obviously will not run AutoCAD. So that's been my headache last week.
Well, I know we've heard from, in a previous one, we heard from other folks using like getting drafting and CAD programs up. There's one called Onshape. And I was going to mention this later on. We actually, a member got us about 30 hours of training content, or I'm sorry, 30 training videos for students on Onshape. And those will be going up hopefully next week. So, Sean, what's up?
All right, so what's working, what's not working for us? We've been virtual since March, so this is nothing new for us down here in Oakland County. What's working is the different methods that I've employed since March in teaching virtual between, and not to plug anybody's products, but Electude, Auto Upkeep Academy, study guides, and then the big one for me for this year has been the OEM training. So I now have Ford training, I have Audi training, We'll be starting Chrysler training soon. So all these dealership trainings that students can get and have dealership training certificates, during this pandemic is pretty awesome. But what's not working is what I discovered when I started my master's work is the inherent problems that we have in education of not teaching kids how to learn. We've taught kids how to fill in the blanks and how to study for tests. And in the mess of the pandemic, with so much asynchronous learning going on, kids just aren't ready for it. They're not responsible for their own education. They don't know how to be proactive and do the work on their own. They're so used to being handheld. And then the other thing I've noticed is, despite the fact we've been saying for decades that kids are great with technology, they are not. Unless it's a PS4 or a Switch, they don't know a Google form from a Google sheet. And we launched Canvas this year, and it was a screaming match because they could manage. So they don't know technology, despite what we've been saying in education that they're great with technology. They are not. So those are my goods and bads.
So actually, I think Sean brought up some really good points there. What is everybody else's take on some of that stuff? And then we'll kind of get back to more what works and what doesn't. Yeah, Jeff.
So in my experience here since March, I agree with Sean as far as they don't know technology, but I think it's it's just like learned laziness. They just don't want to learn technology unless it's something like a social media network or something like that. But what I've found that works for me is, instead of saying, okay, go to Cengage MindTap or go to Google Classroom and do the assignment that I've assigned, I hold them accountable right in class. So whatever we're talking about, I give them 5 to 10 questions in class, and that's their grade for the day. And the way we're operating in Van Buren County is we're virtual every day, like our normal schedule. So I'm able to do that and count it for a grade. So, it might be let's talk about resumes, and then let's build a resume together, and then show me your resume type of thing. Or I've got it a little bit easier than the woodworking guys because I do construction, and I let the kids drive the class and say, all right, tomorrow, what do you want to talk about? Do we want to talk about how to maintain a furnace, or do we want to talk about, how to maintain plumbing, or, whatever it is. But, that's been working, but eventually I'm going to run out of stuff to talk about and teach the kids. So that's what I'm up against is the, what do I do when I'm out of things to do? That's where I'm at.
Yeah, that's another really good point. I think a lot of us are seeing that. We're used to giving the kids projects, and then that takes up maybe 3 or 4 class periods. At some point, we run out of stuff to just kind of spoon feed them, if you will. So other comments before we kind of start diving into some of these topics a little bit more.
I'll go.
Okay.
I've only been on virtual for 2.5 weeks, and we're going back Monday. We'll see how far we go. I've used a couple of different things, but what I did is, since we have G Suites here, we were able, and I know it's not the best program, but Google SketchUp, I had all the kids install it on their Chromebooks because it works on their Chromebooks. And that's what I've been doing. Yes, I understand it's not the best 3D modeling like SolidWorks and stuff like that, but it works with their Chromebooks. So that's kind of helped a lot. We've been Zooming, and just some of the times with the Zoom is the connectivity of it. Some kids can get on, some can't. That's what I've been doing. And then I just have questions, kind of like Neil was. I just had some questions. And I was glad to hear that, Neil, you had Open Lab, because of last week I talked to my administrator about having kids come, because I have projects that are in the middle. I have kids that need to finish up. So I was if we didn't go back face-to-face this week, I was gonna open up in the afternoons, 6 kids come in for an hour, get your projects done, So that was good to hear that you did that, so that I know that other schools are doing that. How many kids I get, because I teach middle school, so it would be up to their own transportation to get here. So that was
Now, are there, I guess, what kind of following up on that, getting kids in for open labs, what procedures and policies do you guys have? Like, do you have anything above and beyond what your school requires? Schools.
Like, what do you mean? I was just gonna have kids come in to finish projects. So.
Well, I mean, like, what rules do kids have to follow to come into a lab like that? Because I think there's a lot of us that haven't had kids even since March.
I was going to use I was going to use Sign Up Genius and give them an hour slot and say 6 kids, there you go. These are the time frames. And then if I have kids, because I'm one of those guys that because I know a few kids that would like to come in, but they had no way of getting here until later in the afternoon. And I would have actually came back at 4 o'clock at night and opened up my lab, 5 o'clock, just for kids, or even on a Saturday like today, I would have had kids come in today if they needed it. Because I know there are some kids who wouldn't have transportation that want to get back in here. So that's kind of how I was going to do it.
So a couple of things that were brought up in chat here. Apparently, because I know Autodesk recently released Fusion 360 for Chromebooks, which I'm really impressed with how it works. If we hadn't started with Onshape already this year, I think I'd be looking at that. But according to Lois, they also have AutoCAD for the Chromebook. Is that right, Lois?
Yeah, sorry, I'm not used to using the Google, so I got to find my spot, my microphone. The AutoCAD web app is actually one that a lot of construction people are using out in the field, because I can open it on a tablet, look at the drawing, modify the drawing if necessary, do markups on it. Ideally, what they're doing then is taking it back to the office to do all the heavy duty drawing on it. But it's great for the introduction kids or my beginning kids, because it's like limited menus and limited stuff, so it's not quite so overwhelming. But it does have to have the updated Chrome. So if kids are like, well, I opened Chrome so it's updated. No, you physically have to go in and update the Chrome to make it update to the current version. And most online softwares, I'm finding that when I run it, if they don't have the updated version of Chrome on their Chromebook, then they're having issues with the software. So that, I would say, would be the first thing to look at. But other than that, I really haven't had any issues with it. You can open the drawings in regular AutoCAD, so it can go back and forth if you go in and out of the building. You can open up the web app in the building. We did that also. It's all up in the cloud. So you download it from the cloud, or you can share the file out with your instructor. I have them download it from the cloud and upload it into my Moodle classroom. You can actually link, and I haven't done this, but you can link your Google with the AutoCAD also for that storage space. So they've put quite a bit into it. It's been around for a while, but they just recently made it open and free for schools to use. It used to be you had to have a license with AutoCAD to be able to get that. But since the pandemic, they've opened it up for schools to use.
Nice, good to know. Other things that have worked for people or anything like that? Well, just so you guys know, I'm one of the schools that in Royal Oak, we've been shut down since March, haven't seen kids at all this year. We're actually getting ready to, I think next week, we're going to send home fabrication kits for kids to build projects out of, like foam core and cardboard and hot glue guns, between next week and the end of the semester, which is middle of January. So I think that we're all trying very new things. And I think the reason I bring this up is Mites is really interested in knowing what people are doing so that we can help get information out to the members. Yes, so the question was asked in chat, can you share that post, share a post on the Mite site to tell what projects and supplies? Yeah, that's going to be something we're going to be looking at as well. So we've kind of talked about some of the physical challenges. Have you guys had to change teaching practices or anything compared to what you've done in person? I know Jeff kind of touched on that a little bit when you were kind of running out of stuff, but I'm sorry, I'm going to get the name wrong. Is it Jeannie? Am I getting the name right? You're muted.
Yeah, it's Jeannie. Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. I'm terrible with names.
That's okay. So yeah, we have not been back in the classroom since March either. We are changing our schedule. We've been on a half-day schedule where I see the kids 2 mornings a week. We have a 7-hour day. So twice a week it's 3 hours, twice a week it's 4 hours. And then we've been having a learning lab Wednesday, but now we're changing it over where we're going to see every class on Wednesday for a half an hour. But the hardest thing, and then they're going to try and have the high schoolers go back at second semester. So January 25th, I want to say. Next semester, I have to teach a 7th and 8th grade woods and metal class, which I'm not sure how I'm going to do that. But I've been talking to the other middle school teacher a little bit. But the high school, the hardest thing, well, besides having to change what software program we're using, so my advanced kids, we were using some paid software, which we had loved and gotten used to for architecture and engineering. And since switching over to AutoCAD and Revit has been difficult. I don't find Revit very user-friendly at all for architecture. I don't know. I just haven't been trained myself, so it's hard as I'm trying to go through tutorials for it. But the hardest thing is not being able to walk around and help each kid, you know, that's the thing, just trying to fill the 45 minutes. I mean, I've been doing things, you know, with career articles and trying to get kids to share their screens. And we're installing a new rule too, where kids have to turn on their camera at the beginning and at the end of the hour. And if they don't, or we think they are not there at all, like they've left the room, we have a new attendance code for that. Like if they're not answering the chat and they don't, you know, turn on their camera, we have a new attendance code for that we can mark, and their parents get called that day. But it's just been really difficult, I think, because I can't walk around helping each kid. And it's really hard for the semester classes because we have not been back in. So the semester classes, I don't even feel like I know the kids. You know, you see these little tiny pictures, and if they don't join you, we have some student support times in the afternoon where it's like an open Zoom room, and any of our students can join us if they want help on anything. Some students I've asked to meet with me at certain times, which has worked out pretty well, but I just am looking forward to being back in the class and helping kids individually. But anyway, that's.
Thank you. So I guess one of the next things I wanted to bring up was, given all the changes we've kind of had this year, people have created new stuff. Are people willing to share that? Because one of the things that people keep coming back to with Mites is we have all this stuff that people are creating. How open are you guys as other teachers to sharing it with other members? I know, like Jeff, you've shared some stuff that we've been able to put out. Would other people be willing to do that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Well, because I guess to that end, there's some of us in the organization that are looking to kind of change how we're doing things. We're looking at really kind of making Mites more into content production to get information out to the members. And so I guess part of this would be, if you're willing to share your stuff, would you be able to help create articles and things like that? Would that be something people could help out with? And we're not talking like lots of stuff, maybe one every 6 months or something. Jeff, I'm going to take a look at that link you just posted. Oh yeah, actually, I'm using OBS right now on this. So for those that don't know, OBS it's actually a streaming software, but it's really good. Like I run all of my classes through it, and so like that transition I put up for the protocol at the beginning, I used OBS for that. Jeff.
It allows for like picture in picture. So if you're running multiple camera angles, like when I go down into machines, I always, you can set up a hotkey. So instead of having to click a button or go into settings and changing the camera, it allows you to do all that very easily. It allows for live editing, I guess. Is that how you would describe it, Dave?
I think that would be a good way to do it. Yeah.
It's almost like having TV studio software for a live performance of something.
Actually, that's what it was originally built for.
Okay. But I found it very, very good to use in my classes. I know our machine tool guy and our drafting teacher uses it in their classes. We've been talking and learning together on it. The only thing that I've found on it is I run a MacBook at home, and it doesn't have the same features at home that it does on a Windows PC. So that's just like, I'm sure you're running the virtual camera, Dave. Is that how you're running it right now?
Yep.
See, I don't have the ability to do a virtual camera on a Mac, even though I've updated it and installed the utility.
Okay.
So it's just little quirks here and there.
Sure. I guess to the group, would more people be interested in learning about OBS, and would that be something Mike should explore PD wise for you guys?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
A lot of this really is we want to get your feedback. We want to find out what you guys need. What do you want to learn about? So that during this, we know everybody is learning 100 different things, and we want to kind of be there for you guys and give you the resources or help you get the information that you need. So I'm just making some notes here as we're chatting. Ooh, what did I just do? Excellent. What other kind of stuff would you guys, and I say stuff in a very broad sense, what else would you guys want to learn about PD wise that we can start getting stuff out to you guys? Lois brought up the hour of code is that next week, Lois?
It's next week, but it's available all the time. So, okay. And it's nice because basically you can introduce it and it's all step-by-step to lead the kid through the tutorials as if they don't know anything. And there's multiple different topics. So you could even open it up and say, pick a topic, do it, give me a screenshot to show me what you have completed, and then they can go work on it. I typically will leave my Zoom open so they can come back in and ask questions or whatever, but then I release them to go work. They turn that into my Google Classroom, and then I have that grade or credit for that day of work. And they usually run about 45-minute lessons. So, they're ideal for, I usually try to do it the week that it's offered, but a lot of times I end up doing it that week before the break because I have so many kids that are coming and going that it works well. They can still do it at home and stuff. So
sure. Yeah, I use the Google Hour of Code as a way to get my engineering students into programming, and then we then dive off into a whole unit with it. But having been a programmer, I'm biased, but I think doing that with any student, programming, even just an introduction to it, to me the takeaway isn't that the programming skill itself, but it's the logic teaching with it and teaching kids how to deconstruct a problem and break it down into those smaller steps. And I think that's a really useful skill in any of our classes and life in general. So anyone else have thoughts on the hour of code stuff?
An hour of code?
Yep.
No.
It's basically, Jim, I can't remember who started it, but it's been going for about 7 or 8 years now, and it was just to get kids interested in various programming languages and whatnot.
Are you going to post all these links on the website?
Yes, I am. I'm going to post, I'll put together a whole kind of review of what we've been talking about today on the website. So let's see. There's also the Google Teaching Resources, which is in there as well. I actually haven't used that, but I have. I've been sent it a couple of times, and it looks like it covers a variety of topics, from app development to reading, things like that. So I'll get that up as well. Yeah, and Jim, also a couple of other things to kind of plug some of the stuff we have. If people are coming up with new lessons that really work, if you guys can submit them, we have a database of lesson plans and whatnot online. That's been slowly growing. Pete and I are actually putting together a glossary of various terms. Right now we're focusing on hand tools and whatnot. So if you have other glossaries you use, feel free to send those and we can get those in.
We need to notify the membership of what you have offered, because they may not overlook.
Yeah, we're gonna kind of over the next couple of weeks, hopefully get some stuff drafted where we can get that out to membership. So to kind of focus back on some of the other questions we have, I guess the biggest one is, how can MITES support you guys as the teachers?
My record, if you get people hear about new stuff, new materials, new methods, they can get that out.
Okay, Sean, yeah, what's up?
So how can MITES help the teacher?
Yeah, how can we support you guys in your classrooms?
I guess that's pretty broad, but I also want to say a pretty simple question.
Mm-hmm.
One of my, I don't want to call it my life dreams, because if you ask 100 teachers how to teach their subject, you'll get 105 different answers. But honestly, I'm also an instructor for automotive manufacturer. Matter of fact, they just contracted me now to do nights and weekends for the assembly line workers. And what I find, honestly, is the absolute best thing for a teacher, and I don't want this to seem derogatory in any way, shape, or form, but is a pre-planned curriculum. Obviously, you can tweak your curriculum any way, shape, or form. But if you look at a math teacher, English teacher, history teacher, right, they've got national curriculums that's laid out week 1, week 2, week 3. And I just see in my career, auto, and I'm sure everyone in this room with CTE feels the same thing. You're given keys to the classroom and say, go teach because you know the subject. I don't know if we are the best, teachers in the world, in the fact that we're not curriculum designers. We're not traditional teachers by trade. So if you're asking me, how does MITES help this? Well, if MITES had a pre-delivered, pre-planned curriculum that says you need to do this, 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 and this to cover everything, and then allow the teachers then obviously to tweak that curriculum as they see fit, I think that would be tremendous especially for a new teacher walking into a classroom.
That's a really interesting idea, Sean. So would you You would have it centered around the state standards then?
Well, obviously, right? Because we got our segments
Yeah.
we got to deliver. And again, if you just ask every teacher out there, and I'll give you a perfect example, in our segments, when it comes to the engines section, right? So many teachers believe that we should be, or that they believe they can cover the entire curriculum on teaching with a small engine, right? So that's an option, but having those curriculums laid out so that a new teacher walks in and says, okay, well, I've got this lawnmower engine. What do I do with it? I had a discussion recently with a coworker because one of our schools teaches small engines and I don't. And I'm at the point where it's like, okay, I'm going to concede. I'm going to give in. I'm going to start teaching the small engine stuff. I think that's really more of a middle school thing than a high school thing, but whatever. I see the point, but hey, now I need to be trained in this small engine. And it's easy to say, I know automotive and I can teach anything, but I don't think about small engines for a living. Hang on a second.
Sure.
So anyways, but it's now our district won't pay for me to go to training. So how do I learn this? Where do I learn it? And those kind of things. So that's, like I said, it's just something to think about, as far as laying out a curriculum. It says X, Y, Z. If we're going to cover these standards, we need to have a plan of attack. And I know for I still do it, right? What am I doing next week? Shoot, I don't know. I haven't even looked that far yet. Having something laid out, as a unified platform across the board. And then not only that, guys and girls, this would really help us if we have those students that are in Ross Commons this month and then are going to move next semester up to the UP, right? If they walk in from my classroom to your classroom and we're teaching 90 degrees or 180 degrees different from each other, now it's almost like they're starting all over again. So some uniformity between the schools and what we're teaching.
So, Jeff, you had a question, comment.
Yeah, Pete has his hand up before I did, so go ahead, Pete.
All right. Okay. So being the second oldest Mites member on this whole conference, who's been involved in Mites besides Jim, this has been beat around the bush so many times. I'm going to be honest with you, it has. And I think the problem is nothing against you, Jim, because you're pretty, for being an old timer, you're pretty up. You want to see things move and go forward. I'm giving you, okay? And we've had people in the past who have really, really pushed back on this. And I'm with you, Sean. This should have happened 10 years ago. But we had a lot of pushback because I'm going to pick on Dave because I see he's on here and he's an awesome woodworker, Berezi. And what he teaches, I don't think what the problem was is I think you have too many. Like, if you got all the woods people together, if you took Neil and Dave and some of the other woods shop teachers who build awesome projects, I'm not sure if they would be able to sit down and come up with what needs to have. Maybe not. Come up with what, and some basic things at 7th grade, 8th grade, and on up. I think that's the problem with the whole thing, and that's where it was in the past. It was just too much. Nobody wanted to share ideas, and I feel it's different now, though. I feel, even though, like I say, I've been here the longest, and Jim, you were kind of gone for that little bit there, and that's when a lot of this happened, when you were gone for that time. I do know that, because you weren't around back during early 2000s. When I got back involved in the Mites after college. I was gone for 10 years because I was off working construction, and then I got back into teaching. So it has, and I think, and this is the problem we're having with MDE. I think if we had some standards, we wouldn't have the problem we have with MDE. And that's something it couldn't happen. I don't know why, but it just would not happen.
I thought we had
there's my 2 cents.
Pete, I thought we had standards somewhere.
But but those standards are not, I don't think they're what MDE it was looking for. That's the problem. I think we need something different, more like yeah.
Can I jump in real quick, Pete?
Yeah.
Sure.
So I teach construction trades now in the ISD, and we have the segments and standards through the state of Michigan. But before that, when I was at Papua High School, I was also teaching a state-approved woodworking program as an off-site program for the ISD, which had segments and standards from the state of Michigan. Here's the problem that we're up against if we want to, have a curriculum for everybody, I guess is what it sounds like from what Sean was describing is, if we're going to have the same curriculum, that means everybody's shop's got to be the same, and all the school districts have to have the same, same equipment, but we have to pony up some money to get everybody to the same, if we're going to have everybody have a chop saw, table saw, so on and so forth. And then we have the problem of enrollment. One class has 36 kids in 55 minutes, where another class has, 10 kids for 2 hours. So, it's one of those things that maybe instead of a page turning curriculum, we come up with a curriculum that we would endorse from somebody like the Carpenters Union or something like that, where it's spelled out for a newcomer, and then as as we get up in our career, we can deviate from it as long as we're meeting certain standards that the curriculum says. And that's just my 2 cents.
No, and that's perfect, because what you had sent me, you sent me a few things and I looked at it, and what you had your kids doing, I'm going to have the same thing, but mine's going to be a little different, because I've already thought in my head, hey, I could make something and do these same projects, and they would have something that's kind of cool in the end. So I agree with you on that. That's the problem, and that's the problem. Everybody shops different.
Before we go any further, I just want to say hi to Dave for hopping in there. And I know Sean and Lois have some comments here. I really like the idea of where this is going. What if it wasn't necessarily you have to follow this curriculum lockstep, but here's a curriculum that can be a starting point for you. And then people can go from there. But that's a thought I had. Sean and then Lois.
All right, sorry, thanks for that.
Yeah, I agree with that. I was just going to chime in too. Isn't that KSA's knowledge, skills, and abilities? So you can kind of checklist those and go through. But if we had a list of projects or things or objectives, you could do the little stuff in between, so it wouldn't be so overwhelming as well. Just if you're a new teacher, here are 10 things that we go through first semester and 10 things second semester. These are the knowledge you're going to get, your skills and your abilities, and then you just kind of figure out what's in between.
Okay. Sean, you were saying though.
Yeah. So I think it was Robert and then definitely Pete. Again, with the other curriculums, I apologize. I don't know them as well as I should, but I'm assuming all of our curriculums have a quote unquote task list associated with it that, we have to cover topics X, Y, and Z. But this, again, like I said, it's a big project because, again, I'm just going to reference automotive. If you look at the ASE, Education Foundation and what they say we have to do, there's essentially 175 things that we have to do. And while a page turning curriculum would be awesome, we're absolutely right in saying that then every school has to have everything on the list. And that necessarily isn't what I'm trying to get at, but this comes back then to our advisory boards and our community members and looking at what we have to teach and saying, okay, well, based off of what you have, this is what you probably should do. And to some degree in the order in which you should do it and leave it at that. But you're right. It's more for that entry level teacher. For those of us that have been doing it for decades, and for those of you that are lucky enough to have been doing it for decades in the same building, you're comfortable doing your thing. So we're not asking anyone in that category to do, something new. But I just think about, like my first year's teaching, and I interviewed for the school the day after Labor Day, and got the job the same day, and came back, to work for my first day of work, which was the second day of school. They gave me the keys. They walked me in the classroom and said, "Good luck," and it was like, okay, like, holy cow, right? I got like all this stuff, and it's like, where do I start? So something to that degree, especially for the new teachers, is what we're looking at, and we need community. We need advisory board buy-in to that aspect of it. So I guess what I'm getting at is that we need an advisory board for mites of people that are doing our jobs and not in industry to give us feedback on how we should develop that. That's an interesting idea. I may follow up with you on that, Sean, just to get some more ideas and see if people are interested in doing that project. Just so we can straighten out some comments here, Lois, and then I think Dave and Pete, and then Jim.
I just want to kind of second on Sean, is that, yeah, an advisory for mites, maybe invite them to, like our judges, when they come in, do that advisory meeting while they're there in the room. Sometimes we find, though, that what works where I'm at in Oakland County isn't necessarily what works for Kent County or wherever across the state. We have all different, a variety of needs and stuff. And I just wanted to say that I think, like, even for myself, even though I've been teaching for a long time, I sometimes struggle with stuff in architecture. I'm starting a robotics class from scratch. So I'm, struggling with what do I include in that. That I think a resource of, here's the lesson I use and here's the segments that it covers. So that when I look at that, I can go, oh, I don't cover those segments. That might be a lesson I could pick up and use, modify for the way I teach it, as opposed to a page turning curriculum. I know there's several in Oakland County that use Project Lead the Way, and I'll say it's a good curriculum with quotes around it. There's stuff in there that I might not do the same way, or stuff in there that's not going to engage the kids as much as it should, or whatever it is. But I think a set of resources that, like, if you were to go out and look at the K-RESA stuff that we developed several years ago, granted, it was geared for kids being able to pass the SAT test, but what it has is it has the whole thing in there. It's not just, oh, here's an idea, run with it. It's, here's the lesson, here's how you do it, here's the answers, here's the quiz, here's the answer for the quiz. I can get a good idea, but then I'm still reinventing the wheel to create that whole lesson. If you could, if we could do a repository of, here's the lesson, here's the segments it covers, and then here's all the here's all the stuff you need. We all have great ideas, but it's that I'm probably doing the same lesson 20 of you are doing too, and we all invented it from scratch. It's much easier to pick up somebody's lesson and go, oh, I can do this, this, and this because this is how my lab lays out, as opposed to, now I got to create a lesson, I got to create a key, I got to create the answer, I got to, I've already stumbled over it 20 times. Here's the things that could go wrong. Here's how you avoid those things that go wrong. So I think more than a set written curriculum, like Sean was saying, here's the 10 things you need to cover for sure. Here's the, here's the highlights of what you need to cover. As you work through it, here's the additional things you need to cover. So kind of that hierarchy of stuff in somewhat of an order. Because when you look at those segments, those are like 15 Excel pages long. Where do you start with all of that stuff? And how does, somebody that covers one segment might cover it totally different than I do. And it's like, wow, that's really good. I might use that instead. So I'm always looking for better ways to do things or deliver things so that kids are more project-based and less reading a book.
Whoops, sorry, I was muted there. Thank you. I guess one thing, if you guys have already spoken, if you can turn off that raise hand just so I can keep track of who's where. Dave, you had your hand up, and I think you were next in the line there.
Oh, okay. I'm on, right?
Yep.
Okay. So as CTE teachers, you're all bound by task-oriented segments. Now, as industrial arts teachers, we're not bound by that at all. So we can create a curriculum that's a generalized curriculum to emphasize various things. For example, my little 7th grade class, of which I have for a quarter, so they are each for a quarter, my major thing that I'm trying to cover is teaching them how to measure, because I took some data in the beginning. 10% of the kids in the class could measure, and my goal is to have 80% of the kids measure. So I have a series of projects of which, because it's my interest, I'm very interested in kite flying and building kites and whatnot. That's the vehicle we use to teach that component. So that's what my major thrust is for my little 7th graders. My little 8th graders, we do a little series of woodworking projects, but their thrust is blueprint literacy. Because I, again, took some data in the beginning, 0% could read a blueprint. And if we're going to try to send some of these kids, now that granted they're early at this point in their educational career, on to some kind of skilled trades in CTE, they're going to have to know those things. When the kids get to high school, my major thrust is work ethic. It's not task-oriented, skill-oriented, because it doesn't need to be in industrial arts. And I have kind of created that generalized curriculum. And if we do have a generalized curriculum, then you don't have to have a shop that's all the same. Because, and I'm speaking from woodworking, as we know, you can cross-cut a board a variety of ways. You can use a miter saw, a cross-cut saw, table saw, a band saw. You can use a variety of tools to do the same task. So, the thought, at least for an industrial arts curriculum, that everyone has to have the same shop. You don't. You can just have more generalized curriculum as opposed to task-oriented. That's it.
So here's a thought. Because Mites has this lesson plan system. If we were putting the various lessons in, what if we could tie, for the CTE people, tie a specific lesson to a specific program standard, like in our gap analysis, strand 3, whatever, memos and notes. But then we also put in grade levels that lesson was appropriate for, and maybe some key words to, like if it's a measuring assignment, that hits a CAD standard, an engineering standard, robotics standard, industrial arts stuff. What if we had, but then you could also put in multiple lessons for those groupings. What are people's thoughts on that? Would that be a system where you're not building a curriculum, but we're taking information that people are submitting and making it searchable in a variety of ways? Any thoughts on that? Because a lot of this sounds like people need more stuff, and I think the stuff is out there. It's how do we get it out to people and help them find it? Sean, yeah.
Yeah, David, I remember being part of a project with the state of Michigan, maybe a decade ago, where they were trying this. They were trying to create a database. So if you look at, again, I go back to engines, right? I got my engines curriculum to do. I could click on this and open up a file that would have 1,000 different things in there. Mm-hmm. It never really came to fruition, never that I saw launched on a full-scale basis. And that, again, concerns me because, if the state of Michigan can't manage a project like this, maybe because it's resources or internet space or whatever, but a decade ago, obviously, we were probably dealing with more of a server-based than a cloud-based, type of stuff. So maybe it was a technology issue that they had back then. But yeah, it needs to be somewhere like, benefits for Mites, right? You're a Mites member. You can go to our website. You can click on your curriculum. You can click on your segment, and you can see Lois's. You can see Jim's, and it can be laid out to where, like, maybe it's just their lesson plan. And this is the subject we're covering. And okay, so I'm looking for engines, and we're talking about internal combustion engine theory. And I click on somebody's lesson plan, and it says what they do in a one-page format, or it could be as elaborate as we want to make it, including, handouts and worksheets and We could even get crazy where we start doing things where it's Google Forms and it's shared in a classroom setting. So technology obviously has changed to where we could do a lot more of that, but it's going to be very, very labor intensive. But the benefit is if it gets done, now any new teacher in the state of Michigan is going to be like, okay, I need to be a member of MITES because this valuable resource is here. And I don't want, and I've been recreating the wheel now, guys, for 13 years.
Yeah.
With the pandemic, I completely recreated the wheel again, but I did it smart this time. I used companies that already have stuff out there for me and just adopted their stuff. And it's like, you know what? I'm not going to work this hard anymore. And that's been great for me. So back to more of the how things are working good. That's what I did.
I guess having been on these larger projects, both on the education side and corporate side, I see the biggest problem with this isn't so much people wanting to do it. It's more the long-term commitment, I think. And I see Neil shaking his head there. I guess just from the people on this call, would you guys be willing to support a long-term project like this? Not so much by doing the design of the system, but really just supporting it by donating materials and maybe helping to organize stuff at some point? Because I asked that because I think we have great ideas, but there's a handful of us building these things out, and really getting you guys, the members, involved in some of these tasks would help spread the work and get more of it done. And so that's where that question comes from for me. I know, Lois, yeah, you're in. Would anybody else be interested in that?
I don't mind.
I've volunteered before, so yeah.
Okay.
There are a couple of things to cover before we blast off here. Does anybody know if we received the money from the state?
That's something we would have to talk about at the general membership meeting, Jim.
Yeah. When are we gonna have one of those?
Yasmin, Pete, maybe you can just double check me here, but we don't have one in December. I think our next one is January. Does that sound right?
Yep, January.
Okay.
Next is I'm having a meeting here with Senator Peters at my house, and you guys are welcome to join. A date to be determined, depending on his schedule, but probably the July-August timeframe. Foreign language issue. I can't remember where I wrote that down, but I saw it rearing its ugly head again, as far as becoming a requirement, perhaps. So I have to go back and research to see what raised my ire about that one. The next is I'm trying to dig up one of my old lists from 30 or 40 years ago, maybe 40. There was a statewide survey put out to scads of employers, like 1,000 employers responded to it.
Hey, Jim, I don't mean to cut you off, but we got some other tasks we got to cover. This is really kind of stuff we should be talking about at the general membership meeting. So I'm going to ask, can you hold off on bringing this up now and wait for the general membership meeting?
Okay, when's the next meeting?
January sometime. I don't know a date. I don't think a date has been set yet.
Mid-January?
Probably.
Okay.
Awesome. Thank you. So it seems like there's a lot of interest in building out this lesson archive system. I don't know what to call it. Even if there was limited help right now, I think, would this be the kind of thing that I think as MITES, should we bring this idea to the exec board and see if this is a long-term project that we could pursue as a whole organization? What's everybody's feeling on that?
Yes, I think so, because I think this falls when we need to find somebody who could head it up, because I think this is going to fall under the board of directors. This person's going to fall under the board of directors, but you need help with it. So
Yeah.
people need to and the committee. So, and I'm all for this. Just one thing, Lois, who had said something, and I do this all the time. In fact, I have a project I do with my 7th graders that I seen this YouTube video, and I took that and I created it. I used kind of the same thing, but I made it fit my shop because I didn't have some of the stuff for it. So yeah, did I skip some steps? Yep, because I didn't have tooling for it. But I do that all the time. I see something and I just create it. I follow what they do. I mean, and that's something, So I do that a lot.
I know Dave and Neil, I think both put very similar comments in there that while they couldn't head it up, they would be happy to help out. Does that kind of distill down what you guys were trying to say?
This is Jim. I have a quick question for Lois Davis. Can we get back to doing those posters we talked about one time? Career path posters?
They're in the process of, with the whole pandemic thing, we've been kicked in and out and in and out. So they are in the process of being worked on.
Super.
So Neil, Dave, would you guys be willing to, I guess, help out with maybe some of that content work? Really just kind of organization if we got a system up and running? You can just give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down if you want it. That's fine. And if you don't want to make a commitment now, I totally get that too. Because things change. We all have work, we have family, we have a million other things. Okay. I guess, okay. We'll kind of start wrapping up because our time's running out and I don't want to go over the time I put in for it. Other things that would you guys be willing to help maybe build content if it could get you a membership for the year and potentially not have to pay for projects like the entries fees? Would that be, how do you guys feel about that?
Hey, David?
Yeah.
Sorry, I had my hand up and then I put it down. I put it back up again because I see a lot of hands are raised and I didn't know if you were calling that way. But 2 things. Great idea of having a waived, fee of some sort for people that are part of it. But this goes back to your original or your last thing about how do we work this in? And I remember just looking at it briefly a couple weeks ago when I was talking to you guys all about being more active. This comes back down to your subcommittees within MITES, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which from what I remember correctly, we talked about there is no quote unquote education committee that's doing anything, or was it an automotive committee that wasn't doing anything? One of those, right? That nothing's been done. So then that goes back to the general board membership meeting where, yes, we got to get something started. We got to get a committee on this. And then, saying, hey, well, we can't pay you for this work, but we'll waive the membership fee or we'll waive the entrance contest fee or if you're coming from more than, 2 hours away,
Mm-hmm.
hotels and stipends that way or something like that. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm not saying that these are things that would happen or anything, Pete. I'm just throwing ideas out there. Spitballing. What's that? You were muted.
Yeah, I know, but it's just, I could see it becoming very ugly.
Yeah. Well, and that's why I think, my perspective is we're kind of changing the nature of MITES. It's been changing a little bit, but we're a professional organization, but I think we're also moving to being a content creation organization to get information out to people. And so I think having some ideas on how we can incentivize that, that may be something next week when we have our board meeting, our e-board meeting, I should say, that we can talk about.
Yep.
Lois, you have a question, and then Jim.
No, I didn't. I'm sorry if I accidentally picked the button.
Okay, just making sure. And Jim, that's not so much our thing. It's more the reverse, but it also comes down to local districts approving that.
Which?
The CTE class is counting for foreign language credit.
Yeah, well, you can also try to ask our legislators to horn in on that too.
Well, that's something I think, once again, I think that's a topic we probably are best to discuss in the general board meeting.
Yeah, I just putting
Sure.
putting them out there for notice that we need to cover it so we don't get our fingers and our toes stepped on again.
Sure. That kind of covers all the topics I had. Is there any topics you guys as a group want to discuss further, or?
There's one item, I have somewhere in my archives here, I have a list of state employers' desired qualities in future employees.
Okay.
And I presented it at a state school board meeting one time with my former school superintendent of schools, state schools at that time. And they tried to shove that forward. And I got it stopped at that board meeting. Unfortunately, board members passed away a long time ago, but the secretary still remembers it. So I saw someplace in the writings that they were trying to raise that in there or put it in there again for foreign language requirement, which would impinge our classes severely.
Sure.
And, so I was going to try to find that, surface it, send it back to the right people, and encourage them if they have any doubts, and put out another survey. Show the same thing. Foreign language, a list of 100 items, gapped down, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was a gap down at the bottom of the list of 100 items.
Well, you know what, Jim, why don't you send me an email on that, and we can kind of talk about that, and what we might be able to do with that. Okay.
Yeah, I don't want us to get screwed because somebody not watching.
Sure. Sean, you have a comment.
So it goes back to when we were starting the meeting about what's working, what's not working, and someone was talking about resumes. So again, I just wanted to share working. So I took my resume thing to the next level this year, and I actually had my advisory board interview my students for a mock job. So I created a mock job ad, posted it on Canvas. The students had to reply to the ad. They had to schedule the interview. And then on the day of the interviews, even being in the pandemic, they met online with me. I pretended I was the shop foreman, and then they got to meet their interviewer, and they were assessed. And the takeaway from this, it was simple. I've been teaching this skill set, this non-traditional, and it's all in our curriculum. But the big takeaway is, from what I learned, is based off of my previous experiences. While the kids seem to be okay with us, when you put them in front of a complete stranger, they crumbled, and they crumbled hard. I literally had one kid almost cry. We had to actually stop the interview and say, "Wait, take a breath. This is just for fun." So if you guys could step up your mock interview stuff and make them do it live, and then with my advisory board, after their experience with this, for our job shadowing opportunities this year, the students are actually going to have to interview for their positions now. So it's no longer just going to be, hey, we've got these job shadowing things, you're going to go here for the day. Now the students are actually going to have to interview for the right to go to that place. And that's just taking it to that next level. And it really was because of the pandemic. I had to come up with some different way of teaching it. And so that worked really well for me.
Sean, that's very similar. We, the last couple of years of my high school, we did a interview project, we called it, and started out with all the CTE 10th graders, or 11th graders, I'm sorry, going through an interview process like that. Last year, we did it for the entire 11th grade class, and they all sat down in front of business professionals of various types and interviewed for made-up positions, but then got feedback from the business professionals about what worked, what didn't, what things they need to improve. I think actually for this lesson plan system, having a full project where you could say, I want to do this, and having all the materials to set something up like that, both in person and online, I think would be a great place that mites could start building some of these things. So maybe we'll talk a little bit later on about how to set that up.
I'll pipe it.
We've got some resources I can throw your guys' way too for that resume stuff that our integrated English teachers.
All right, I'm already in the works on making this part of the Mike's competition.
Yes, that
I'm taking stuff from a national organization that does job interview, and I'm rewriting it to fit more what Mites is. So it's going to be part of the competition.
Okay, I didn't want to throw that out there, Pete. And
I will throw it out there because I'm the one who's kind of heading it up. So
okay,
this job interview process will be part of them, and we could actually do it virtually. So that is something that I'm hoping. I don't know if we'll get it off the ground this year or next year, but I'm working on some stuff.
I can help you with that. Vika did that.
So
I still used to sponsor Vika.
that's in the process.
Excellent, everybody. We're coming up. We got about 10 minutes left. So any other thoughts, final thoughts, comments that anybody wants to put out there? Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. I'm going to wrap this up. One last comment I would say is if anybody is looking for resources, we will have those videos up on our YouTube channel. If you can subscribe, we're looking to get to 100 subscribers because then we can do some channel customization stuff. So if you go to, I'll have the link up on the chat there. Let me see if I can actually pull it up right now.
You need to send out a blast.
Yeah, actually, that's what I'll. You know what? That's what I'll do. I'll send out an email blast asking people to subscribe. But thank you, everyone. And I think we'll probably take. We'll probably do our next one towards the end of January. Probably sometime after our general board meeting. And if you guys have topics or anything you want to talk about there, please feel free to email them to me. Thank you, everyone, for being on for this time on a Saturday. It's appreciated.